Hey guys, Devon here from Baka Burrito, and I know I look a little bit crazy. I'm deep conditioning my hair and I have a bonnet on, so bonnet gang. Um, anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys today about a lesser known anime. Maybe it's a little bit more popular than I'm giving it credit for, but To Your Eternity. It's currently on Crunchyroll. To Your Eternity is the story of an immortal being who ends up with the name Fushi. He's created by an unnamed god at this point. I'm saying the god is unnamed at this point, not he's unnamed anyway. So I think the story excels in so many different aspects that I think it deserves much more attention than it's getting. The first thing I want to talk about with this show is the fact that we have an immortal character who's learning what it means to be alive, who's learning the basics of life, and he's still relatable. That that may not sound like much, but it's very difficult to write an effective main character anyway, but especially more so when the character is not human. This character starts off as a rock and then obtains a dog form and then obtains several human forms and several other forms as well. That never stops him from feeling human. It never stops him from feeling grounded. Especially the more he learns, the more you can sympathize, empathize with him. And the show really makes you think, what does it mean to be alive? And that's not like an existential, depressed kind of way. That's just the question that the show is asking. Because we have several human characters as well who have themes in, for example, one character's journey is optimism and despair. Like that's the theme. That's the thematic importance of his storyline, and really that's really interesting when you think about it, because that's the first lesson that Fushi learns: optimism and despair. Next one is having a dream, what it means to have a mother, etc., and also what it means to lose someone when you care. And that's the second lesson he learns. So it's framing all of these necessary things that are all a part of life, and we're dialing it up to have to happen to an immortal, right? So this type of being that you would think is usually like should be above it all, or like shouldn't be bothered by these kinds of problems. And yet we see consistently that by being involved with people, he's going to learn these lessons harder and harder. Um, I really don't want to spoil it. However, I think if the I don't think it's possible to continue talking about it without at least a minor spoiler. So if if you haven't seen the show and you're interested in watching it, what I will say is I'll talk a little bit more about it generally for another minute, and then um, after that, I kindly ask you to just leave the video, just so that way we can go ahead and get into a little bit of the spoiler, so I can explain to you why I like the things I like. Um, and if you leave there, just leave a like, leave a comment, and thank you for the support. Come back and watch this video after you watching the anime. So I'm just going to talk for a little bit more about the general. So there's a lot to learn through this anime. You get a lot of very interesting side characters, very unique designs, and the artwork and the music are phenomenal. But the thing is, when you're unable to relate to Fushi, there's always a human there to ground the story for you. And that's very, very, I think that's necessary when you have a protagonist who is an immortal like this. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and get into some of the specifics. So again, if you want to avoid spoilers, you could jump to the last 40 seconds of the video. That way it's just the outro. So you could catch in one of the other videos. But if not, that's fine. See you guys on the next one, or see you guys after you watch the anime. For those of you who are still here, let me just give them... Alright, now we could get into it. So, Fushi first meets the dog as the dog is dying on top of him because Fushi starts out as a rock. The thing about this is he forms with a wound that the dog has, like because he's a perfect copy, and that's the first thing that makes you go, oh, he copies it perfectly. Why wouldn't he just heal himself? He doesn't understand the premise of healing yet. So that's kind of interesting. So he happens to find the dog's owner, an unnamed boy. He's still unnamed to this day, because the boy never introduces himself to his own dog. Um, but this boy is the last of his kind, and he wants to go. He finally decides to leave the village that he's grown up in, and it's completely run down. He's the last person, and he wants to go find the adults and other people who left him there way back when. And so he starts preparing to embark on this journey through the frozen tundra, and he's so hopeful, full of joy. And then you go through this whole montage of him trying to find his people, and then he does, but they're all dead. So he attempts to keep going and gets a leg infection, and after that he just can't keep pretending anymore that he's not hurt, that he's not in despair, because his whole thing was he was pretending he wasn't hurt. Um so when that happens, he still has this leg infection. They go back to the village, and the boy pretty much gives up on his will to live. I think he could have fully recovered from his leg infection, or like from his injury, had he still had the will to go on. But the fact that he found out he was the last, like that, literally the last, like it was speculated, but he was actually the last. And I could see how that could be too much. Like all of his family, all of his friends, they're dead. And like at the beginning he's saying things like, they said that they'd be back by now, but maybe it was just a little bit harder than they thought. Or like, so he still held out hope, and he still had this optimism about him because he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. And the fact that I feel like the phrase seeing is believing really is what undid him. Since he chose to leave, he lost that blissful ignorance and was forced to cope with the true reality. And despite everything, he was too weak to go on, so he let himself die. And his last words to Fushi are, "Remember me always." The thing is, he's talking to an immortal being who can take the form given circumstances. It seems to be that his power allows him to take the form of something when there's a connection. At the beginning, it's a literal connection, like so they had to be touching. But as it goes on, it seems to be emotional as well. Fushi deals with losing his mother. It's a surrogate mother, and she's also a little girl. But she's the one that names him. Um, and that's what the whole next arc is centered upon, right? So it's centered upon him dealing with the loss of a parent, essentially. Um, and that's really interesting because she's like, I think she's like 5 or 6 years old, March, and it's funny because he's learning things that you would learn around that age, and he's learning it from a literal child. So I think it's completely appropriate to call March his mother, because that was also her dream. Her dream was to grow old and have children, and the fact that she couldn't do it herself, she had a surrogate son in Fushi. Um, and because of that bond, he's able to take her form after she passes as well. Um, and then the next one, he loses a brother, etc., or learns what it's like to have a brother, rather. Now, I say all of that to say this. The scenes where the person he is assimilating the form of go, like, when they pass on and they move on to the afterlife, it's shown that they see the life they want, right? For example, the unnamed boy. He sees all of his friends and family who left years ago, and the old people he lived with for many years. And he finds them, and he sees them all. He even sees his dog, and his soul is happy. It's fulfilled. Then we get to the next one. We get to March, and after she passes, she sees her life where she grew up. She had her toys that were her kids. She sees them as her actual kids. She gets to meet her parents again. She sees her big sis. But then she goes, "Wait, where's Fushi?" And she turns around, and after she turns her back on the afterlife image that it created, all she had to do was stay there. She would have been satisfied. When she turns around, she sees the life that she left behind, and she realizes she'll never get to make her goal. Luckily, there are there's another character that is also passed on. She's able to go on with her, but using her last, I guess, ties to the world, she's able to save someone through Fushi. Um, yeah, and I thought like that scene in particular, like the scene where that scene in particular was so heartbreaking. I was like, oh man, like this is a child coming to terms with the fact that she'll never be able to achieve her goals. She'll never be able to grow old like she wants to, and that's a really difficult topic to cover. And I think the show handles it so well, so tastefully that like I don't think there's a lot of shows out that could handle something like that kind of a mature subject matter, and get away with it properly. And it seems to be that like the more people are bonded with Fushi, the more they'll have regrets when they go, and that's really sad because they all acknowledge at the end that they wish it wasn't their time. They wish they could have had more time or something like that. Um, But yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna cover on the show, and I know that's a kind of a low note to end on, so I'll end it with this. I say all that, and it sounds really sad, but I say it to say this. I think that the show is so well written that I'm gonna start checking out the manga because I can't imagine like it has to be like typically manga is better written than the anime itself, so I can only imagine how well it's written, and I think I'm going to get more information that I want from the characters, um, more exploration of his abilities, um, and I hope to have a follow up because I think that this anime could or this IP could be one of my top 10 truthfully, and I've only seen like 12 episodes. However many episodes are out right now, that's how many I've seen. um, I think it's 12, but I can't remember the exact number. And it's just it's sometimes it's tough to watch because it's like, man, I didn't plan on thinking about this topic right now, but now that I am, I'm like, oh, this is such a well written think piece. um, but yeah, sometimes you just need a sad anime that's really, really well written, and it goes, "Wow, I have to watch this," and then you go watch something happy right after because like it's like that was really well done, but I'm trying to be in a good mood right now. But yeah, so if you guys want, you guys can leave a comment down below with what your favorite sad or serious anime are. I'd love to hear them, and I'll definitely check them out. Leave a like and a comment if you've seen this anime or if you're gonna check it out, and let me know what you think of the characters in To Your Eternity. Um, I've been Devon. We're Baka Burrito, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank you.